Okay.
It'll be good. We'll be ripping and rolling. Everybody can watch the webinar. Anybody who's watching the replay, thank you for joining us. This is obviously available on YouTube. It'll be on our Facebook and on our website. So if you missed
Tomorrow. It'll be on my
late,
website tomorrow.
yes, everybody, it will be available for you guys. So we're really excited to talk about everything today, talk about the comparison trap and how comparison infiltrates our lives. So we're gonna give people a couple more minutes to join in, and then we'll get started. But yeah, I'm pretty excited to talk about this subject today.
As am I, because everybody compares. I think I compared, last week I had to catch myself. And I was like, April, the comparison trap.
Get it together, girl. And that's
I had to catch myself. I had to reel it in real quick. I had to reel it back in.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, it doesn't go away. So that's why this is so important, because
and that's why I had to tell somebody yesterday, like it's an ongoing process. Like you don't just wake up one morning like, oh, I'm never comparing again. Like I wish it worked like that, because I would have took that pill a long time ago.
Girl, that
I think we all would have. But no, it does not work that way. I wish it did.
Exactly. I totally agree. And I absolutely wish it did as well. Things would be a lot easier. Just take a pill and you're good. Oh, it'll be good. It'll be good. Well, I think we should get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Comparison Trap. I'm Marjani, and this is April. Okay, there you are. So, yeah, we're here. Thanks for joining us today. We are here to obviously talk about the comparison trap. So make sure we introduce ourselves, because we're not Beyonce yet, you know. You might not know.
Just give us some time. So I guess I will go ahead and hop into my slide and introduce who I am. So let me just share that. There we go. Let's go ahead and share that. Okay, so I am April. I am the creator for Pink Forecast. And what Pink Forecast is, it's a lifestyle blog with the purpose to entertain. It first started off as an entertainment blog, like, you know, gossip, but I realized that writing about Karuchi and Chris Brown really does not give anybody any depth, like any meat. And so I changed the direction of my blog to be more so inspiring. So the events are just about my life and people around me. And so now I hope that whenever somebody reads my blog, they take something away from it and it's not just gossip. So that's why I altered the purpose and the vision and the direction of my blog. And basically it started as a PR class back in 2012. Our teacher told us to write these press releases and designs and these proposals for a business. And I just pulled out of thin air a blog. And so now Pink Forecast is what it is because of that PR assignment back in 2012. And the Facebook links, IG, and my website are all the same. And you can find them at Pink Forecast.
It's fabulous, y'all. I'm so glad. Like, honestly, I love your change in direction. Like, before I introduce myself, like, I love your change in direction, because you just, like, it's so real. You give a perspective. You still have that, like, you know how gossip writers or entertainment writers, they still have this, like, flair about their writing. Like, girl, yeah, I want to sit down and talk to you. But then you give it that spin on lifestyle. So I love your change in brand direction. I'm for it.
And because it's like I had to, because I just feel like there are so many entertainment blogs out there. And so after you're done reading them, it's just like, okay, now what? Like you don't take anything away from it. And that's why I changed the direction of it. But thank you for reading. I really do appreciate it.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah, it's awesome. And it's, you know, it's pretty much in line with what I talk about. So for those of you guys who don't know me or haven't heard of my blog before, my name is Marjani Aladdin. I am a personal development coach and lifestyle blogger. I focus on fashion and lifestyle content, but primarily I concentrate on teaching millennial women how to become their best selves through personal development. So I'm super passionate about teaching people how to live their best life, how to become their best selves, and to understand that there are tools that we are equipped with that can help you get to the place that you want to be and actually enjoy it. That's the big thing. There's so many successful people out there, and then they get to this and then they realize that it doesn't have the weight that they want, and it's because they went about it without understanding themselves and balancing that entrepreneurial or business or career success with the success of their personal development. So I think that everybody in the world has something special and magical about them, and becoming you and marjanialaddin.com is about pulling that out and making you see how amazing you are. So I hope that you guys will follow me on social media. It's marjanialaddin.com. Let me pull up the slide for you guys so you can spell it, because I have a difficult name. I know. Well, it's not difficult, but it's not the easiest to remember how to spell, so I get it. I'm gonna screen share here.
And while she's doing that, just really quickly about Marjani, I know a lot of people say they are life coaches and they, have all these tools, but she really does mean it, because a couple of weeks ago, I called Marjani with an issue of my own. And after I hung up the phone, she made me reevaluate my entire life. So she is that good, and she doesn't just say, oh, I'm a development coach, I'm a life coach. Like, she really does mean it, and she really is like really good at what she does. So
thank you,
literally,
girl.
like, go check her site out and listen to the advice that she gives, because it's really legit. Like, it really is.
Yeah, we got some content for you guys today. We have matched up the best of our skills to really dig in deeply about this, how comparison shapes our life. I think that it's a very one-note idea of what comparison is. And so today we're really going to break down how it affects our lives on different levels and how you can get over it. Not just understanding that comparison exists and trying to shut it off, but understanding how to shift your mindset to the next level. So what we're going to cover, April's going to kind of talk about what we'll cover in this mindset webinar.
Okay, so what we'll cover today, we'll basically talk about what are comparisons. I know people know what it means, but we'll give like the Webster definition and why it's toxic to our development. We'll also talk about the real reasons why we compare. Why do we covet other people's lives? We'll cover that. And Marjani will also give actionable steps on how to appreciate rather than compare, and also how to cultivate a mindful mindset and how to increase your peace and be more grateful for what you have already instead of comparing.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's we're really gonna break down what, like April said, what comparison is. Just going back over those 4 or 5 topics that we're going to talk about, we did say, what is comparison, right? And I think that that's going to be our beginning point of understanding actually what it means to compare, but not just what it means to compare in the definition of it, but why do we compare? What does it mean for our emotional being, for our state and our growth as individuals, in our careers, and our relationship, and our personal development with ourselves? So really breaking down how comparison infiltrates our lives on that level.
And
so
go ahead.
Yeah, what is comparison? Like, I don't know if any of you guys have access to the group chat on the side, but if so, if you have any comments, please feel free to jump in. We definitely want to know, what is comparison to you? How do you feel like it affects your life? Do you feel like you only compare in certain situations? Or maybe you don't feel like you compare, but you feel like you have a hard time connecting to people when they are successful, or when they're doing better than you, or if they're doing something that you wish that you could do. Let's talk about it. We'd love to hear from you. And April, what about you? What do you think? How do you think it affects your life on a personal level?
Well, on a personal level, and I'll talk about it. Let me switch screens. On a personal level, oh, how do I stop it? Okay, I'm just gonna go with it. So on a personal level, I think comparisons do have a huge effect on you. And as we go further into the presentation, I'll talk about my own example and my own life experience, how it got so bad to the point that I literally became a hater. Like, I stalked this girl's every move, and I compared literally everything we did, and so much so that I distracted myself from my own purpose, which is another topic that we'll cover here today. But comparisons have a huge effect on us, so much so that sometimes we don't even notice the effects that they have on us. So
absolutely,
it's real. It's really real.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think that we understand the definition. So if we look at the definition that's in front of you guys, compare, it's to estimate, measure, or note the similarity or dissimilarity between two things, right? So we understand that. I'm looking at one thing, I'm looking at another thing, and I'm noticing the differences between us. But we can have a comparison mindset that comes from an emotional state. And so a lot of times, and you see this on the presentation, we are bombarded with images and things on social media and friends and family that have this idea of what we are supposed to be in life, how we are supposed to be, what we're supposed to be doing, where our process is supposed to be. And if we don't see that our personal process is reflecting that which we expect, then that's when comparison starts to hit our lives, and not just in a observational state, but it starts to be a detriment to you because you're concentrating energy away from your true purpose.
Yeah. And another thing, comparisons are inevitable. Like, it is natural for us to compare. But the thing about it is we rarely compare like in a positive light. We always look at what we don't have or what this person has that we don't. And so it takes a negative effect on us. So don't feel bad if you do compare, because we all do it. It's just learning to look at what someone else has and not covet it, and just be like, okay, that's what they have, this is what I have, and just appreciate where you are. So if you do compare, which we all do, I mean, don't get down on yourself about it. You just have to find a way to redirect that energy, as Marjani was saying.
Absolutely. And then, and we will go into this a little bit further within the slides, a little bit down further, but comparison is negative, but like you said, it does happen. So we'll talk about how to use that thing that you can avoid. You can't avoid comparing, but you can avoid it negatively affecting your life, and your mindset. So we're going to talk about how to basically dismantle and disassemble comparison before it starts to affect you, and actually flip the script so that you can grow and prosper. So yeah, we can go to the next slide. So comparison is the thief of joy and the enemy of authentic living. Just getting into that for a minute, when you are comparing your life to other people, you're going to start to, as April said, mimic them. You're gonna mimic them, or you're gonna start resenting them because you can't figure out how to tap into your own thing, right? And it starts to take away your appreciation for your own talents and gifts. Who wants that? Looking at someone else feeling bitter about what they're doing, but that's because they're in their process. I'm sure we've all heard like the stay in your lane, and I know a lot of us get offended by that, but there's power to staying in your lane, like understanding what you're great at and what you're powerful in and what your skills are, and feeling empowered in that versus looking at somebody else's skill and wishing that you had them. Work on you, build that and appreciate it. And that's what authentic living is. That's where the magic happens. So, okay. Yeah.
Next, why do we compare? What are the reasons that we compare ourselves to other people? And here we listed 6 reasons on what drives our comparisons. And some of them are lack, insecurity, external pressures and expectations, what other people expect from us, desire, fear, and obligation. And those are only a few. I feel like there are so many others, but those are only a few that we listed.
Right. Absolutely. And that's such a big thing to ask yourself, what is your driving force? So I think this goes into the beginning part of dismantling and understanding comparison. Comparison, we all have triggers. Everything isn't the same for everyone. So for me, I want to build my blog and my business to a certain point, right? And a lot of us who are entrepreneurs, we happen to look at other entrepreneurs and look at what they have, and we want to do what they do. But if you are trying to become someone else, you're not going to be able to tap into what really truly makes you happy and what you're truly meant to do, because we all have purpose in this world. That's why we have talents and passions. So is your mindset the reason for your unhappiness? What is the reason that you're comparing? And as April said, we do have those reasons. Do you feel like you're lacking something in your life? Whether it's money, whether it's status, whether it's a level of your relationship, or just a feeling inside of understanding where you want to go in life. Do you have insecurities that you're playing on? Sometimes we compare our bodies to other people, whether it's a celebrity, whether it's our friends. I know for a fact, I have a best friend, her body is the bomb. always been the bomb, probably always will be the bomb, okay? She was a dancer and a swimmer, and her body just like cat, 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 you know? And I remember when I was younger, we grew up together, I was like, I want her body. Like, I want my body to look like hers, and her body is the bomb. I love her body. It's great. As I got older and I started to work out and started to find something that made me feel better about my health, I didn't have to compare. I could feel good about my journey and my process in becoming healthier. And I think that applies to a lot of things, not just weight loss, not just fashion or money, but just feeling like you've got it all together. I know there's people like, I wish you got it all together. I wish I had it like you. And we're like, I don't have it all together. Like, we all feel kind of lost, you know? And that's because we tend to look at the highlight reel of other people's lives and compare our entire process to that. So are you lacking something? Do you have an insecurity? Are there external pressures and expectations? This is a big one, guys. This is like, especially for us in this 20s age, if you're like between 16 and 30, this is a big one. Your parents have expectations. You might have children at this point and you feel like you want to be at a certain stage, but the process isn't going how you want to. You may have a significant other or friends that are at a different stage in life that you are, and they have expectations of you. And so those create pressures that causes you to compare your lives to others and maybe not feel so great about yourself. So targeting where that comparison comes from is really the first step of being able to dismantle it. Same thing with desire of money, of success, of whatever it is. Fear is a big one. Are you afraid of getting to the next step or doing certain things and you see someone else doing it and therefore now you're comparing your life to them? Is fear holding you back to a point that now you're envying someone who else was able to take that step? And then the last thing is obligation. And this kind of ties back into external pressures and expectations, but we have a lot of obligations too. I think family is a big pressure. People want us to be certain things, have certain careers. I know for us millennials, a big thing is making sure, like the 9-to-5 job. A lot of us have businesses. We want to be entrepreneurs. 20, 30 years ago, everybody wasn't popping up and being an entrepreneur. So some of our parents don't understand that. Do you delay your success for trying to keep that obligation to your family and your friends? And then you find yourself looking at other people who went ahead and made that step, and you're comparing yourself. You're wondering why you haven't gotten to that level. So those are just, like April said, a couple of things that really can infiltrate you from a psychological point that will manifest in a comparison mindset. So what is comparison, right? And we talked about how it's not only just an observation, but it's also a feeling. So you want to target what your triggers are. I'm going to share April's screen. Okay, so comparison is an emotional response to misplaced perspective and judgment of self. Mindfulness is the practice of living present without judgment. So when you're comparing yourself to others, you're looking at either your past, why didn't I do this? Or you're looking at the future, can I do this? Will I be able to? Is it within my power? And instead of understanding that you have power within your present moment to do what you need to do or whatever is necessary to get you to that next step. How do you, for you, April, I know you gave the example of how you compared yourself to another blogger or another person. How did you feel like your perspective shifted when you realized that you needed to tap into your own power?
Well, as I'll get into in the next slide, basically it distracted me from my purpose. I became so engulfed in what this person was doing that I lost sense of what I should be doing. So emotionally for me, of course, it got me down, as we'll touch on later in the presentation. So basically my entire focus shifted. And so instead of focusing on April and what April is good at, I was focused on what we'll call her Diane, what Diane was good at. And I structured everything I did. And it sounds terrible, but I'm glad that I can talk about it today. But I structured everything that I was doing around this specific person instead of myself. And I wasn't being true to myself, my goals, and my own purpose. And emotionally, it did take a toll on me until I realized one day, April, you're April and Diane is Diane. You can't compare you to Diane. You have to be your own person. And when I realized that and I tapped into that, I started, making Pink Forecast pop and I shifted the direction.
Yes, you did.
You have to take that shift. So when I tapped into that, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I'm saying you tapped into that power. Like exactly the moment you looked at yourself, you're like, wait a minute, I'm the bomb. Like I could do this, and you are.
Yes, and I think we forget that sometimes when we make those comparisons, we forget how, you know what? I am cool. Like I am the bomb. Like we forget that when we make those comparisons. And I know completely I lost sight of it. I forgot how great April truly was, because I was so focused on Diane. And I really can't believe I'm telling y'all this because, and if she's watching, hey Diane, but and I'm thankful for that lesson, but had it not been for that, I don't know if Pink Forecast would be where it is right now or if I would be where I am right now. So even though comparisons have a negative connotation, you do learn a lot from it and you do learn a lot about yourself in the process. Didn't mean to ramble back.
Back to the slide. Before we go on to the next slide, that's super true. And I think that that's a great transition into what we talk about next, because comparison exists, like we said before, right? Mm-hmm. And the first point you made about concentrating on Diane and wanting to be like Diane, like you could not concentrate on April. And that's such a poignant remark, because just in general, you will not, I don't care how well you do Diane, no one can do Diane like Diane.
Like Diane.
Tap into Diane, no one can do Diane like Diane. Just like no one can do Marjani like Marjani, no one can do April like April, and no one can do y'all like y'all. But the only way that you can really manifest and tap into that power is to understand yourself and understand that everybody's process and their power and their purpose is different. Let me tell you, you can live the exact same life as someone, have the exact same talents, and your purpose be completely different. Mm-hmm. Your process be completely different. Your lessons needed to be learned completely different. So you have to understand that life itself, and this is kind of going into like metaphysics and psychology, but like it's a unique individual experience. They even say on a scientific level that our experience alone, what we see and perceive in the world, is only what our brain tells us. We don't even know what is real outside of what our brain tells us. So if your brain tells you you can do whatever you want and you're concentrating on that power and you're tapping into that, baby, you're going to be on top of the world. But if your power and your mind is concentrating on being Diane, you're never going to be able to be Diane. It's impossible. And even if you execute it well enough to pass it off, you'll never be happy. You can't be happy being someone else. It's impossible.
And I'm so glad you said that, because remember a couple of weeks ago, I called Marjani because I felt as though someone was copying me. And again, I'm just being completely candid. I'm being honest. And I was so distraught. I was so upset. And I told Marjani, this girl, this person is copying me. Everything I do, she does. And I was so distraught. But Marjani had to remind me, April, nobody can do April like April. You can copy someone's content. You can copy their style. But at the end of the day, just like I couldn't be Diane, nobody can be April like April. And that's another thing. I'm kind of like shifting subjects, but if somebody is, doing something that you are doing and you're worried about it, nobody can be you like you. And I just had to throw that out there really quickly before we got away. So I just had to throw that out there really quickly.
And you know what? That does go back to like affirming your power, because and that can go back to insecurity. Like, I don't want this person to do what I'm doing, and then like they do it better than me, and I put all this work in. They're copying what you've already done. I just putting that out there. By the time you've put it out, you have 5 more ideas. They've got to catch up by the time. And one of my favorite, like Maddie from MaddieJames.com, Maddieology, she said in one of her podcasts, she was just like, if you gonna copy me, good luck, boo, because you're gonna have to keep up. And it's true. Like when you are tapped into your purpose, your creativity is on fire. Your ideas, you're in alignment, right? And I did a webinar 2 weeks ago, and we talked about tapping into your power as an entrepreneur. One of those things is you get into a state of flow or alignment when you tap into yourself. Now, that doesn't mean like everything's going to be perfect, but I'm sure you guys have all experienced someone saying, yeah, everything just started to fall into place. Like as soon as I started to concentrate on myself, everything just started to fall into place. I started to meet the right people. I got all these ideas. And that's what tapping into your power is. It's a state of flow. You know, when you're concentrating on getting into someone else's lane, you're not going to run the same. You can't run.
That's true.
You can't run well if you're zigzagging. I didn't run track. I was a chubby high schooler.
I did, and I can tell you, you can't run right if you zigzag.
I know that for a fact. Unless you're running from a crocodile, that's the best way to get it, apparently. So back to the slides, though. I mean,
back to them.
Yeah, it's definitely important to understand how comparison affects us and why it's important to tap into your power. Okay, so we're on results of a life of comparison, correct?
Yes, results of a life comparison. We are getting into the 3Ds, the comparison trap, the 3Ds. They are distract, decrease, and diminish. I touched on these in my blog, pinkforecast.com, but today I am going into depth. And we are on the first D, distract. So basically, when we compare ourselves to other people, our focus becomes cloudy. We lose sight of our goals and, you know, what we're supposed to be doing, aka our purpose, and a sense of ourself because we're trying so hard to be like somebody else. And we stray away from our original plan. So essentially what happens is we take our eyes off the prize. We forget what's really important, and whatever specific purpose we had has now become kind of second priority because we're too engaged in what somebody else is doing. And again, not to talk about Diane, but Diane has made an impact on me. Let me stop sharing. Not to talk about Diane, but Diane has had an impact on me. As I said, if you look at my blog now in 2017 and you look back to where it was in 2012, it's completely different. I first started off trying to be entertainment, you know, writing about Kanye and Kim, Evelyn throwing drinks at Tammy, you know, things like that, stuff that had no meat. But that was what Diane was doing, and it was working for Diane. So I'm like, you know what, April, you may want to write about, you know, uplifting content, but Diane ain't doing it, and Diane popping, so you got to pop. So you got to do what Diane does. And so I literally shifted my vision, my purpose for Diane. And so that's what I mean when I say you shift your purpose for someone else. And so that happens sometimes, but the things we set out to accomplish that are specific to our purpose are then altered because we're looking at what someone else is doing. And that's what I did when it came to Diane. So basically, we alter those goals, thus forgetting our general purpose, like what we are really trying to do and what we really set out to do, not realizing that those goals are more in line with someone else's vision rather than our own. And sometimes it doesn't even go that deep. Sometimes it's as simple as seeing what someone else has on social media, like they have the latest, you know, Louboutins, the latest car, like the Mercedes truck or whatever. And so basically what you're doing is slow, like you're making slow money. And so instead of staying true to what you're good at and what you really want to do, you're just trying to pop and make that quick money. So you stray and you just completely abandon your original purpose to go and do what works for somebody else. But again, that's not gonna work for you as it worked for the other person because it's not in line with your purpose. And so basically we just have to get to a point where we can recognize what someone else has and appreciate it and just say, you know what, I'm happy for Diane or Mark or whomever, because that's where they are right now, and just be, you know, appreciative of where that person is instead of trying to, you know, covet what they have. And Marjani, you can feel free to, you know, add your tidbit on that.
I definitely agree with all of that. And distraction, guys, is like, I think this goes for anything in life. And I know with personal development, for a lot of us, it's hard to connect it. So I try to give examples, like real life examples. Distraction is the king of like helping you fail. I'll give you a perfect example. How many times were you, when you were in college, were you trying to do your work with the TV on and a show came on and you were like, oh, Wendy Williams said what? Oh. Like, and then 3 hours later, you have 3 words on your paper that's due in the morning. You know what I mean? And that's just a small example how it takes one thing to get you off course. It just takes you to be distracted and put your attention in the wrong place. And now, yes, you might be able to get on track. So now here's a great example of how you detract yourself. You waste time and you pressure yourself and detract from your purpose. So let's say the school example again, you're writing a paper. It's due tomorrow at 8. It's 7 p.m. You watch Wendy Williams in the background, knowing you get distracted with Wendy Williams song, but you put her on anyway. She starts talking, 3 hours go by, and you're like, oh snap, now I'm pressured. Now my process, which could have been the last 3 hours of me easing through it, now I'm like, oh my goodness, I have to just try to put something together. I'm not putting my best foot forward because now I feel like I have to make up for lost time that I spent being distracted. Now that didn't even involve comparison. That's just the distraction factor, right?
Yep.
So now, go ahead.
Nope, I'm sorry, girl. You on a roll. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Even if you're coveting something, like now, if you're coveting something, you're now distracted and your energy is taken off place, right? So the first thing, like April said, starts with distraction, and I think that's such a poignant, first step is reminding yourself to keep your eye on the prize. And also, like we said before, you're comparing somebody's highlight reel to your whole life. You can't do that. Somebody's gonna put something on Facebook, and I'll give you guys a perfect example. I've been with my boyfriend for 7 years, love him to death. Okay, but it's not always roses and kittens and red carpets. That's what a relationship is. You grow over time. But I've heard so many people over time be like, I want your relationship. Well, you might not have wanted it the whole time, because the whole time, it takes work. It takes work. Just like you look at Diane's blog. You're like, Diane is popping. She got blah, blah, blah. But when Diane was up at 4 a.m. trying to work on her website, tearing out her hair, nobody was taking selfies about that. Of course you didn't see that. Of course you didn't have to compare yourself to that, because everybody shows the good most of the time in their process. So remind yourself of that. Don't get distracted looking at things that actually don't even matter.
And like you said, I wonder, staying true to your purpose, I wonder where would my blog be now versus, had I not been trying to copy Diane, all those years, like where would I be now? But again, I don't look at it like that, because at this present moment, like I'm where I'm supposed to be. And Diane was a lesson. This is the last time I'm gonna talk about Diane, y'all. Diane was a lesson to me, but I wasted time comparing myself to Diane. And that's what you do when you make those comparisons. Like, you're wasting time. There's so much other stuff I could have been doing, just like there's so much other stuff that you could be doing aside from comparing and, being distracted by someone else. Just throwing it out there.
And I'm going to give you guys one more example, because I know we've given a lot of person-to-person comparisons. I want to give you guys an example of like life, like where it doesn't involve someone else. So and this is a personal story. I knew from like 5 years old that I wanted to be an attorney. I wanted to be in corporate America. I was like, I'm going to live in New York. I'm going to have Louis Vuittons every day. Like, I'm going to be a lawyer. And I went to school for that. And that was like my passion. Now, I still love law, but as I've evolved over time, I've really developed, obviously, being a personal coach. That's what I'm passionate about. But there became like almost a fork in the road that I came to about 2 or 3 years ago, when I had a hard time. I didn't tell anyone that I was a blogger, like quote unquote, for like 6 months. I had a hard time saying I'm a blogger. And it was because I felt like people wouldn't take me seriously if I didn't say what my full-time job was, which was, I guess I could have said that and it would have been impressive because I had a good job, but that's not what I was trying to build. That was really honestly a job for me until I could figure out how to get my blog and my business to the next step. But because I was comparing what I thought I was supposed to be, i.e. a lawyer or whatever, and felt that what I was currently doing wasn't living up to that expectation, I held myself back from asserting myself from opportunities I could have grasped. So just in itself, it doesn't even have to contain anyone else. Comparison can just be understanding that your process as a person is going to change and evolve, and you're going to have to open yourself up to that mindset as well.
Yeah, and that's actually a great segue into our next point, which is, do a little share here. Comparison decreases gratitude. And what it does is we lose sight of the things that we already have. Let me say it again. We lose sight of the things that we already have. And it makes us less appreciative for what we have, where we are, and our qualities and our skills, our own uniqueness. And I'm going to say it again because I feel like y'all need to hear it. It makes you less appreciative for what you have. And most people actually are doing better than they think. And, you've come a long way from where you used to be or where you were. But because you're so busy comparing your life to somebody else, you're not really appreciating where you are in the given moment, because you're looking at what someone else has, and it's preventing you from being thankful for what you do have. Another example, when I was in college, I got my first car. I was actually in a hand-me-down from my sister because she had got a new car. And it was a Kia Sophia. I think it was a 2000. And I was so proud of it. I went out and bought some shiny new hubcaps, you know, to put on it. And I was so happy for my Kia. I was like, yes, my first car. I'm excited. And then this girl I know gets a brand new Lexus.
Oh, man.
So then my little Kia with the shiny hubcaps and looking so hot. So instantaneously, I forgot, you know, that I just got the car. So before that, I didn't even have a car. Like I had to, you know, get rides from my friends. And in that moment, so quickly, I forgot to be appreciative for what I had because I was looking at what someone else had. And so then my Kia did look as hot as it did when I first got it because I instantly made that comparison. And Marjani, I know you probably got an example that you want to share. I see it beaming, so go ahead.
No, I know. I totally agree. That's a great example. Like, you can't be grateful for what you have if you're sitting there comparing it to others. It's just kind of impossible. How can you say I'm grateful for what I have, but I'd rather have what they have? And you're absolutely right. And also part of gratitude is just recognition and acknowledgement. So if you have a talent and you're comparing yourself to someone else whose talent is different, then how can you appreciate, cultivate, and then grow your own talent? If you're like, well, I'm a dancer, but I wish I could sing. And baby, I'm talking about like you can't sing. Like there's not, like singing's not in the cards for you. I mean, that's cool to have aspirations and grow, but like if you're focused, if you have a talent, tap into it, right? Well, if you're sitting here wishing you could sing instead of sitting here going to a studio and working on your dance skills, like you could be teaching classes now. You could be tapping into loving how and go into that and grow that and inspire other people. And so here's one thing that's really big about gratitude. Gratitude, the synonym for gratitude is appreciation, right? To appreciate. But I think it's so cool because appreciation kind of has a double meaning. You can appreciate something like, I appreciate you being in my life, or things can appreciate and increase in value, right? So you can appreciate your talents, meaning grow and widen them, getting better at them by just acknowledging that they exist. By appreciating them and loving them, you can appreciate, meaning grow them. If you're good at, a couple of my friends actually have realized that they're really good at makeup and they just started YouTube channels. And I'm like, girl, slay that makeup. Like, that's what you should do. If you're good at something, tap into it. Don't be ashamed of it. Because if you're sitting there trying to be someone else, you're going to waste your talent.
And you're right.
It's going to go to the wayside.
Because we all have a set of skills that we are good at. And I'll be the first to say, I'm not a dancer. If it's more than a two-step or a cha-cha slide, I can't do it because I'm not a dancer, but I recognize that. And so if I'm trying to compare myself to one of my friends who's such a good dancer, I'm forgetting the talents that I do possess and that I do have. We're all good at different things, and that's okay. So the trick is to focus less on what you aren't good at and focus on what you are good at. Like you said, amplify that. Instead of focusing on what you don't have or, you know, what you aren't good at, look at the things you are, because I guarantee you, you are good at so many things, some that you probably hadn't even tapped into yet. But if you are constantly comparing yourself to what this person is doing and what they have, you will never tap into those qualities, those skills that you possess because you aren't being appreciative. And it's just like you're just in a different mindset when you can appreciate, you know, all that you have to offer. Like you said, like the universe just sends stuff to you and it just opens like a whole new space. And so when you can appreciate what you have and not make those comparisons so much, you'll excel to like heights that you didn't even know existed, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so true. It's so true. Like, just tap into that power. It's just like a muscle. The more you use a muscle, the better you get at using it. If you're spending time using muscles that like don't do anything for your skill, then you're just wasting time where you could have been building the muscles that you do. And here's the other thing about it. One last point is that I know we talk about gifts and talents on a very surface level. You can dance, you can sing, you're good at this. But I challenge you guys to ask yourself, why do people want me around them? What do I give to the world? You know, what and this is really important because this is actually going to help you realize what your passion and your purpose is in life. For me, I feel like I'm a healer. You know, when I'm good at a lot of things, and we're all good at a lot of things, but like PowerPoint isn't at the top of my list of talents, you know, and I feel like if there's one thing, or why do I want people to feel good around me, or why do I want people to be around me? It's because I want them to feel good. I want them to feel empowered and inspired. And I feel that I give off that energy. So if I concentrated on the fact that I wasn't the best singer, or I wasn't X, Y, and Z, or even I do fashion blogging. This is a good example. I am a fashion blogger and I'm a personal development blogger. There are fashion bloggers who like are just super, super fly. They could put on a raincoat and a paper bag and you go like, girl, you did that. I'm not quite like that. Like I have a specific, pretty conservative style that I'm okay with. Like I have developed to know that I'm okay with that style because that's what my audience is for. But if I'm trying to focus on just being a fashion blogger and fitting into that one box, then all of the great knowledge or passion that I have for making other people feel great about themselves, who's going to miss out on that? Because our passions and our purpose and our talents are not for us. In case you didn't know, you are a smallest part of the equation of your purpose. You are just a tip of the iceberg. The energy. So your gifts come through you and you're supposed to put them back out into the world amplified, which means you need to dig and tap into what that is, appreciate it, amplify it, and then put it out to others so that they can be inspired. Like if Michelle and Barack never became Michelle and Barack, how many people would not be inspired to be the people that they are? You got to tap into what you do. People talk about Barack the way he speaks. Listen, right now, everybody makes it on SNL trying to be Barack. But when he was in college, I bet you there are people who made fun of him. I can almost guarantee it. I can almost guarantee somebody was like, I don't like the way you public speak. I don't like the way you pause or your accent. Maybe you should work on that. Maybe if he focused on that, it wouldn't be the iconic speech and like the dialect that he uses that people automatically connect to. Just be you. Connect to that and appreciate it, and people will appreciate it too. You'll attract the right energy.
Exactly. Be you. And hopping into our next slide, the last D is comparisons diminish happiness. Oh my goodness. Let me say it again. Diminish happiness, meaning comparing steals our joy. Because when we compare someone else's practice reel to someone's best, our practice reel, we automatically get down on ourselves. And just a study, the average person checks their social media 17 times a day. That's just average. That's not everybody. That's average, like a minimum of 17 times a day. So if you are checking this bad boy here 17 times a day, that is a lot of content to be ingesting on somebody else's life. Like that's a lot. And so think about it. If you check your social media at least 17 times a day, you are bound to come across somebody who, is on a different career path or somebody who's married. Another example, I hopped on Facebook because, Facebook is notorious for the proposals, the baby announcements. And one day they just seem to be coming back to back. I'm like, everybody get married. Everybody having a baby. Literally, I got my phone and started drifting through my contacts. Like, okay, who is hubby material? Like, where is my husband? Who is my child's father? Because I had literally ingested so much of someone. That's true. I literally ingested so much of someone else's content that I began to really reevaluate my whole life. And I got so sad because I'm still single, no shame in it. And I was like, well, dang, they're getting married and like they're there and I'm here. So when's my time coming? Because I was, again, making those comparisons to where they are in their life versus where I am, forgetting that where I am right now is no coincidence. It's no mistake. There's a reason why I am where I am and why I have what I have. But again, I lost sight of that. And I'll admit I was very sad because I was looking at what someone else had. And like I said, you just have to get to that point where you realize that that's where they are, and that's fine, but you have to appreciate the space that you are in. So just be mindful of that as you are ingesting all of that, that content, because 17 times a day, that is a lot, Marjani. That is a lot.
That's a lot. And that's the average.
And that's on average. And I probably check mine at least 30. So I think 17 is just being generous.
Right, exactly. Absolutely. That's so true. Like, you are literally inundated with that type of content at all times. It's just like, if it's not career, it's somebody getting married. If it's not somebody getting married, somebody got a new car, somebody, you know, and people want to share their good news. So you have to understand how to process that. And like you said, mindfulness is super important to live that life and observe your life and your journey without judging it. But you also have to be aware. And that's like, and we'll talk about this in the next couple slides, but it's the moment of like noticing your thoughts and then stopping them before they get carried away, because the mind, it will snowball very quickly. I think we all know this. And this is not just with comparison. This is with insecurity. This is when you're mad. Like, shoot, this was when you're in love. Have you ever met someone and you're like, I like him, and then all of a sudden you're like, you're in love all of a sudden? It's like, what happened? I didn't even like
somebody on the first date, and I planned our whole life. By the second day, we were walking down the aisle.
Right.
Like, slow it down.
Your mind just starts to go in and go in, and you're like, how'd I get here? And that's the same thing. And we tend to like stop ourselves sometimes when we get carried away with good stuff, because we're like, it's not gonna happen like that. But when it comes to negativity, a lot of us don't have the same level of awareness. So we get into a cycle of destructive thought that literally will drain your energy and pull you away from your purpose. And so, like you said, it's going to give you that distraction. It's going to decrease your gratitude, and it's going to diminish your overall quality of life and happiness. So,
and there will always, and this is just the truth, there will always be somebody that you may, view as, prettier or further ahead in their career, or, whatever. I mean, that's inevitable. But as I said before, and I'll continue to say, you just have to trust the timing of your life and realize that just because this person has this or they possess that, it doesn't take away from what you have and what you have to offer. And again, I can't say it enough, and I have to remind myself constantly, trust the timing of your life. Where they are is where they are. Where you are is where you are. It's not a coincidence. It's not by chance. It's where you are supposed to be. So just honor the time of your life, and just know that eventually you'll get to where you are trying to go, because what you think you become, I think you said that earlier, like kind of sort of in the beginning of the presentation, what you think you become. So just continue to focus on that rather than what you lack or what you don't have. Just throwing that out there.
Yep, I absolutely agree.
And I'll go ahead and share the next one so you can go ahead.
Yeah. So we spoke about, so April talked about those 3Ds, right? So let's just go back over them. What are the comparison traps? That's what we're here for. And I see we have some new people that joined us. Hi. Thanks for joining us. My name is Marjani. If you don't know me, April is here from the Pink Forecast. And we are here talking about how comparison affects our lives, how we can get over it, how we can make our lives better, right? So we'll jump back into the slides. We're talking about those 3Ds. What are the actual comparison traps, right? Distraction. Comparison disconnects you from your unique and special purpose that requires its own unique process, which cannot be compared. And I said this earlier in the presentation. It doesn't matter if you have an identical twin, you guys look the same, you guys have the same talent, you think you have lived the same exact life, I promise you your process will still be different. Your purpose is different. No two people are the same. You guys can do, I've literally met bloggers, I've met other people who literally we do the same exact thing, and we're completely different. And there's a reason for that. Your talents, your gifts are a key that unlocks other magic within the world. Okay, so that means that if you are a healer, you are supposed to heal some people that are going to go do some really amazing things in the world. You don't even, it's not even your job to know how far your magic reaches. All you're supposed to do is tap into that potential, because yes, it's going to make your life better. It's going to make you feel more whole, but giving unto others throughout your own gift, that takes the happiness to a whole new level. It really does, because it's living a life of purpose. When you feel purpose. We all want to feel like we have a purpose on this earth, that we're doing something important, that we're helping other people. I mean, unless you're a malicious sociopath, most people, that's how they feel, in some shape, form, or fashion. The issue is most of us don't know how to. And then that's when we start looking in external places instead of tapping in within to figure out how to do that. So distraction, decreasing gratitude and diminishing the quality of life. Comparison tasks us to use energy to observe others that could be used to practice appreciation in the present. And that's your gifts, that's your experience. You know, there's times when you want other things. You might want fancier clothes, you might want a bigger house, but you have a roof over your head. You have an experience that you should really right now appreciate. The more you appreciate what you have, the more you'll get. And not just like, oh, I want more money, so I'll just be better with my money. It's not about that. It's about understanding, and this is actually a biblical thing, being a good steward. Okay, like being a good steward of your talents is about your attitude, and it's about how you treat things. So when you have a gift or a talent, you have to treat that with good stewardship. You have to guard that, covet it, like guard it, build it, let it grow and infiltrate other people's lives. Like be a passion ninja, you know, go after it, because you do have some type of magic, whatever it is, that the world absolutely, and I say this without a shadow of a doubt, absolutely needs. Whatever it is that you have, I don't even know what it is, but I can guarantee you need it, because you wouldn't have it if they didn't need it. So how does this work? And this is probably, after the 3Ds, one of the most important parts of it. How comparison actually infiltrates our mind. And if we can understand the steps, then you can understand how to stop the negative effects in your life, okay? So the first part of comparison is observation and reflection. So an occurrence stirs an emotional response. We talked about this. This could be viewing something on Instagram or social media. You might be hanging out with a friend and you guys are, you know, catching up on something, and they tell you about some good news, and you're internally, you observe something and you start to reflect on it, okay? You might be reading an article about a successful individual or whatever it may be, but it's something that stirs an emotional response. Now, there's a tendency to assume that this is where comparison begins, right? Like we see something somebody has, and immediately we start comparing. But that's not what happens. This initial emotion we feel is the root of where comparison starts. But that's not where we start to compare. So if we observe something and we start to reflect on it, and that emotional response comes, when that emotion shifts, which is the next stage, emotional shift, that's when you start to notice the difference. And your mindset is what determines how you process those differences. Okay, so if you don't have the ability to be aware of how your mind is processing internal information, if you're not aware of your process, if you're not respecting how the process of becoming you happens, then after you observe something that maybe you feel a sense of lack of, or you're insecure, you have obligations towards, and there's an emotional shift and you notice the difference due to your inner desires, that's where observation turns inwards. This is where comparison will begin if you're not careful, and it can be a very slippery slope. Like things can go downhill very quickly from there. And I think, April, what you said is a great example. You know, you saw Diane and she had her website and you were like, oh, well, that's popping. And you know, here's the cool thing. April wasn't even a hater. Like there's so many ways that like comparison infiltrates your life and it will affect you. April was basically saying like, Diane's popping. I want to be like Diane.
I eventually became a hater. I eventually became
right.
a
And
hater.
that's what catch it though. That's what will happen. It went from recognizing and observing, wow, this is somebody who's successful. And I am reflecting on my personal experience, knowing that I want to have that same level of success. So we have observation and reflection. It's stirring that emotional response. One of, wow, I'm very impressed. And B of, this is something that I desire. So now that you've noticed the difference, your emotions started to shift. There's that, well, what am I doing wrong? We tend to ask ourselves those questions, right? Like, well, what's wrong with me? Like, why do they have that and I don't? Like, I'm pretty sure I could do that. Like, what's wrong with me? That's when that emotional shift happens, and that's when that danger comes in. So if we don't stop ourselves at that emotional shift, this is where that distraction comes in. This is where the comparison trap starts to close in on your mindset and pull away from your passions and your purpose. Your energy is now focused on comparison between you and another subject that you believe reflects something that you need or want in your life. Okay? Your energy is shifting from observation to comparison. It's leaving you and it's now giving someone else and their talents focus. Not necessarily the best idea, because how can you get better at what you want to do if you're sitting there looking at Joe, Jane, and Diane, you know? And that's what the trap is. And we call it a trap because what it does is it doesn't allow you to grow. You're stifling your thoughts, your creativity, your passion, and your success. That's what traps do. They don't allow you to get to that next stage. So lastly, after you're distracted, and this is what you talked about, you became a hater. You didn't become a hater in these stages, April. You became a hater after the distraction. After you realized that Diane was doing something that you wanted to do, you started to focus on her. And now you were like, well, I mean, I guess it's all right. Like, you know, Diane doing it, but.
And now that you said that, I'm sorry, there is an excerpt that I wanted to share because you touched on it. Basically, I tried to, you know, discredit or say like, oh, it's not really that, of what Diane said. And this is an excerpt from a book, and he said, it is our nature to constantly compare ourselves to others in terms of money, looks, coolness, intelligence, popularity, or any number of categories. If we are upset that someone we know is more successful than we are, what we deem as more successful, we will naturally experience some sort of envy or insecurity. But often we will find a way to minimize it because it is an unpleasant emotion. We will tell ourselves that the success of that person is a matter of luck, or came through their connections, or that it won't last. Like, as you said, oh, I mean, it's okay. I mean, it ain't all that. But for some people, it goes much deeper than that. And that usually because of the level of insecurities. But I just felt that I would share that excerpt because it was prime example. You try to kind of, okay, well, I mean, it's not that good. I mean, it's okay. But in actuality, like you said, it's that negativity setting in.
Yep, and that's the result of that insecurity, and and that's only because you became distracted. Because you were like, if you compared yourself to someone, but you understood your power, then what you're doing is being inspired. Because it's saying, I see that they can do that. I believe in my own power, and now I'm going to focus on tapping into that. Right?
Exactly.
Instead of being distracted and wanting to become them. And now that's when that negativity sets in. Because Diane was just popping when you were observing her.
She was.
What happened? You know, and that's the trap.
I don't know where Diane is.
She's popping now. So, you know, and that's the cool thing. I mean, it's kind of cool because if you're real with yourself, and that's the thing about this. All of this is about awareness. You have to be honest with yourself. And sometimes it really sucks. Because you're like, I'm a hater right now. Like, I'm hardcore tripping. Like, I need to get it together. Like, you got this. I don't need to compare myself. Like, that's not my thing. She's got it going on, and I love that. And you know what? It inspires me because it shows me that I can tap into my own power and do what I'm supposed to do so I can be as bomb or to another level of what I think. And that's the other thing. We can do every single thing that we can imagine. Obviously within the physical realm, right? So if you're like, I want to write 5 books, but you don't feel like you're a good writer, you could write 5 books before you left this earth. You have the potential to do it. You know, you just have to tap into it. And then the crazy, almost like sparkly, magical thing is you can do way more than you could ever imagine. There are millionaires and the people, like, we read about it all the time, and they're like, I never expected. I had big dreams, and yet I never expected this.
Yep.
It's because when you start to tap into your power, it's almost like you didn't even know that it was there. You know, you didn't know how strong you were.
And as you said that, literally, the moment I stopped comparing myself to other people, like you said, I tapped into that potential, and the ideas. Like they keep coming, the content, it keeps coming because I tapped into my own potential and I stopped trying to worry about what this person was doing and what that person was doing. And I posted a post on my Instagram today, Nike ain't worried about Reebok. So literally, I can't worry, or you can't worry about what somebody else is doing. Like you said, it's that awareness and tapping into your own qualities, your own skill. And once you do that, you'll take yourself places you didn't even know you could take, because the ideas, that you could go, because the ideas that I'm coming up with are literally just like dang, April, you thought of that for me forecast? Like they are just coming because I'm not comparing myself to anybody. I'm trying to stay in my own lane. And when I feel myself getting distracted, I pull myself back in. Like, April, stay on course. This is your journey. Stay true to your journey and just, ride it out.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's so poignant, and it's true. And that goes into what we'll talk about a little bit later about awareness, because if you can catch yourself, I mean, comparison is what that excerpt you wrote it is human nature. And it's actually it's actually part of our physiological response to danger. We are looking at things to see what's different because we want to be able to adapt in dangerous situations, right? Now, things have adapted over time. So now that physiological response, basically a protection mechanism, has kind of evolved in a way because now we're inundated with things, pressures, like we said, insecurities, where we're told what we're supposed to be in life. How can anybody tell you what you're supposed to be in life except you?
Exactly.
So, yeah, so I'm going to go back to the slides, onto that last part where the negativity sets in. And there is zero way in the entire world, and I'll just let you know like that you can compare yourself to someone's life via social media, via work relationships, even some of your close friends. And I say this because sometimes we're like, well, I don't compare myself to social media, but then you might have a best friend who's doing something different than you. Maybe you're at different stages and you consistently find yourself having trouble being happy for them or something like that. So no one is ever, I promise you, no one will ever tell you everything. It's impossible. It's impossible for anyone to ever tell you the entirety of their process and their struggles, because it's just human nature to dig in deep and deal with it, So what you're seeing most of the time, what you're hearing, is all the good news. So of course, when you compare your complete list of your process to someone else's short list of accomplishments that you're seeing or that they're sharing with you, of course, it's going to look different. It's going to look like you're stumbling hard, but most of the time we're not privy to the process. We're not a part of or even allowed to know about the hardship, the sleepless nights, the arguments with significant others, the battles with self-confidence, and all the things that we actually need to deal with to get to the next step. All we see is happy. So when we lose perspective and focus on the lives of others, and we focus on lives of others, we open ourselves up to self-doubt and insecurity and delaying our own personal success. Okay? This is a breeding ground for ruining your relationships with people around you, harboring resentments fueled by insecurity, and also damaging your personal relationship with yourself, which is one of the hardest things to repair, because if you start to distrust yourself, if you start to feel like you do not have the power that you do, you're going to stop making moves towards those steps. You got to believe in it to actually put the action in it. If you don't believe that you can do something, you're not going to try it. Even if you believe in the slightest bit, if you don't have that confidence at all, then you're never going to try. And if you never try, then you'll never succeed. So does it matter? This is a big question, because I talk to people about personal development all the time. And one of the biggest things that people are like, well, I just have other things to work on right now. I just don't have time to work on myself like that, to worry about awareness or personal development. But then the issues that we deal with are my relationships with others aren't good. I can't stay disciplined. I'm not focused. I feel out of alignment. All of those things you can't check off on a to-do list. I promise you, I love to-do lists. I have a million of them. But what you can do is tap into yourself. And when you tap into yourself, when you can understand what the personal, because we have ownership of our own experience in life. And I said this earlier, our experience in our life is our own. So how your mindset, how you interpret life is a reflection of your mindset, right? So we know people who are super positive, right? And you're like, how are they so positive when things are negative? Well, they have a positive mindset, and somehow they can always seem to see the good, and they can always seem to turn things around. We know people who are the exact opposite. Everything could be going good, and yet they still complain. And then they seem to breed more negativity. It's because where your mind is where your life will be. Okay, so yes, it does matter. What really happens to our lives when we compare ourselves to others? Number one, it affects your personal relationships. You cannot be happy for other people if you're comparing yourself to them. And if you're doing it in an unhealthy way, that breeds that level of negativity and comparison that we talked about in the slide previous.
And really quickly of how it affected one of my personal relationships when I was in, no need to worry about where I was, but when I was in a relationship and I literally, like, I guess you could say I was insecure. And so I would always compare myself to like other females, so much so that it eventually, damaged the relationship, or it played a huge part in it because I was so insecure that I was always questioning this, and that, because I was comparing myself to other people. And eventually it led to the demise of the relationship, that and a series of other things. But insecurity played a large part in it because I was like comparing my personal image to these other females and who I thought he was attracted to. So that's another way it can affect your relationships, because that's how it affected mine.
Absolutely, that's a big one. And I feel like, I mean, obviously both of our audiences are primarily millennial women, and a lot of them are unmarried or just starting in relationships. That's a big thing. And social media is another, like, nobody in the 90s would worry about their boyfriend.
No.
Like, you're in Vixen.
Where they gonna see him at?
Yeah,
there was no place.
Yeah, there was no place for this. I mean, things do change, and there are so many ways that your insecurities can be played on, which is why I said earlier, what are your triggers? If you don't know what ticks you off, what sets you off, in a lot of different forms, not just with comparison, but with anger, with insecurity, with doubt. If you're not aware of what those things are, then they're just going to overwhelm you. You're just going to let them take you over. And instead of being aware enough to stop them before they get out of hand, and there's that snowball effect. So what we said, comparison affects your personal relationships, right? Because you're going to create distance between you and other people. It diminishes your self-confidence. And this is, out of all of them, I mean, your perspective is really important, but this is the biggest one. Because when you lose that confidence of self, even in like the most finite form, that's breeding ground for depression, to be honest. Like, not hormonal depression, but like psychological depression, where you just get into a cycle of negative thought. Negative thought is like quicksand. You just keep getting sucked in deeper. And then if you're not aware that you might have to stay still, connect to yourself, and you're just wiggling around, looking to the left and right, trying to figure out what everybody else is doing, you're just going to keep getting sucked back in further and further.
Yep.
Okay. So you need that confidence. Like, what is it that you have to give to the world that you feel good about, that you can tap into and remind yourself why your process is necessary? Why are you struggling through what you're struggling through? Because there's a reason, right? You're going towards a greater good, that prize at the end of the tunnel, whatever that purpose is at the end of the day. For me, I stay focused on my life goal of how do I want people, when I leave this earth, how do I want to be remembered? That's my guiding force. That's how I live my life. So everything that I do, from career to how I treat people, is a reflection of, at my funeral, how do I want people to feel about me? I want them to feel like they were loved, that they were inspired, that they were helped, like, as much as possible, and respected. Like, those are the things. So I mirror my life going backwards to reflect that. But if I didn't feel like I could actually do that, if I didn't feel like I had the confidence to affect other people's lives in a positive way, I wouldn't make those choices today that is actually going to get me to that point. You understand what I mean? Like, it's like GPS. If you know where you're going, you can backtrack the directions in the meantime. And you might have to recalculate a couple of times, because life is going to throw things at you, meaning times where you might compare yourself. But if you know what your purpose is and you understand why you're going through the process, you can realign your mindset and not get off track. So it also skews your perspective, and stifles your growth. And that goes back to getting off track. Like, your perspective is off. You're trying to be X, Y, and Z when you're A, B, and C. Be A, B, and C. You're wasting time trying to be someone else, and you don't need to do that. You need to tap into who you are, because you're not going to be able to be successful if you don't tap into your passion, your purpose, and to your talents. You won't. It's like, I don't know, like never getting your Harry Potter letter. You know, you can never go to Hogwarts. You are magic, but you just never knew it. think about how sad that would be. You know, and like you go through the rest of your life disconnected. You know, and that's not what you want. So, and all of that is to say it decreases your overall quality of life. And you just want to, life is for the living. Life is to be happy and experience and feel good about. So we say not to compare right now, like, but what's the real harm? And it's everything is inside your head. Everything that starts from within leaks out into your actions. And manifestation and success in any field is a product of the mind. Okay. So let's talk energy. This is like my big thing. Energy affects everything. How you choose to use your energy will reflect in your success. And I'm talking not just physical energy, but mental energy. Everything you do, every thought you have, both negative and positive, creates energy. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this, but a lot of very successful women always talk about how they only have like 2 or 3 outfits if they work in corporate America. April, have you ever heard of this? Like they'll only wear a black suit and they'll just switch out certain accessories.
I have heard of that.
Right. And yeah, it's because when you get up in the morning, and a lot of people don't think about this, you're usually up for an hour and a half before you even walk out the door, right? Mm-hmm. The moment you wake up, you are using mental energy. Mental energy to pick out your clothes, to figure out what you're going to eat, you know, if you have everything for the day. So one of the things that I do to preserve my mental energy in the morning is I lay out everything the night before. Like if I have to leave for work, I lay out my breakfast stuff in the refrigerator so I can just not forget anything. My clothes are laid out, everything. Because the way you use your energy, like think about 2 hours of energy just down the toilet before you've even walked out the door. So like using our personal energy is the same thing. If you're spending time, let's say you spend 30 minutes a day looking at someone else's life, right? And you're like just using that energy to compare what you're doing wrong and what they're doing right and how you need to change your life to be more like them. What if you use those 30 minutes to tap into your power? What if you even just use those 30 minutes to affirm your current talents? It doesn't have to be, oh, well, I'm not going to compare. Maybe it's you take 15 minutes of mindful gratitude practices or you're journaling, but you're taking time with yourself to expand who you are and get better as opposed to concentrating on someone else. Mm-hmm. So energy is like a really big thing. If we go back to the slides. Yes, so comparison breeds insecurity, doubt, and jealousy while distracting us from our individual purpose. Like, that's pretty plain as day because you're going to be jealous if you're sitting there coveting what other people want. So it's really important to understand how you use your mental energy and shift it towards a positive space. You're stealing energy from creating a joyful and successful life when you can be concentrating on that.
Yep. Hey, so now tell them, Marjani, ways to overcome those comparisons.
Mm-hmm.
And
what we have.
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say we have 5 of them. 5 ways you do it.
And I'll just list them, and you can go. I mean, I'll just say them, and you can just go into depth. Yeah. So basically, 5 ways to overcome comparisons. As you can see, decode your desire. Cultivate mindfulness, practice gratitude and self-acceptance. Again, that's that awareness and that gratitude. Embrace the journey, meaning, you know, honor the space that you're in and improve that awareness. Those are 5 ways to overcome comparisons. Marjani, take it away.
Yes, so decoding desire. I think we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier. What is your trigger, right? If you comparison comes because it's breeded from either lack or insecurities. We spoke about that in the earlier slides. If you can pinpoint why you're actually comparing, you might be able to stop it before it gets out of hand, right? So let's just say, and this, we'll talk about awareness a little bit later, but like, if you understand that I desire to live without financial difficulties over my head, right? And maybe you see someone who is experiencing that lifestyle, who's the same age as you, maybe you guys are friends, and you wonder why whenever they tell you something, you kind of like, you want to be happy for them, you love them, but there's still something like almost a sad feeling inside of you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's not like maybe you haven't become a full hater yet. You know, you just kind of like don't feel great about not, because we all do it. Like we all kind of become like, well, I mean, I'm doing stuff too, kind of thing, you know. But if you can't check yourself before, then if you don't understand that that's a trigger, then you'll never understand or even realize that that's something that you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So you definitely want to decode what your desires are so that you'll be able to stop yourself or prevent yourself from going into that tailspin of comparison. Okay, comparison and the feelings associated with it are a result of a desire or something you feel you're missing. So when you can decode what it is that you truly desire, you can make authentic decisions in your own life that will help you create a life well lived. And mindfulness teaches us to live without judgment, and it allows us to interpret all of our actions more objectively. So if you find yourself like scrolling through social media, looking at somebody's life, and you're coveting and desiring, and you're feeling self-doubt, or even just feelings of just not feeling worthy, then it's time to reanalyze, you know, why you feel that way. This is a moment of opportunity. And that's the thing about comparison. You can shift it to help you excel in your life, but you have to have the awareness to decode what is giving you that trigger. So if you can figure out what it is that you truly want, understanding that it's not that person's life or their process or their talents, but maybe one part of what you see in their process, now you can start to make decisions that get you to that point. So let's go back to that financial example. If you see that your girlfriend is doing super great and she's saving and she's able to go on trips and XYZ, but she's in a career that you have no desire to be in, then you don't need to try to be in her career. You need to figure out how you can give yourself some financial confidence, how you can feel less stressed out about it. Now you know what you need to concentrate on, and you're like, you know what? Instead of coveting her life and feeling bad when she's doing well, I know that I want some financial security and confidence. Maybe I should find a financial coach. Now you've empowered yourself with tools because you were able to tap into your awareness, decode your desire, and now make a change to actually get to the point you want to get to. That's called power. It's called taking something that is human nature that can ultimately derail you from your success and taking ownership of it to a point that you're like, this is not going to stop me. I understand that this is something I want. I may not be where I want to be, but I am capable and confident in my ability to get to that point in my own special, unique way.
Yeah, and it goes back to, like you said, like recognizing what you are good at. What works for me may not work for you, and vice versa. Again, that just goes back to say, like, tap into, focus on the things that you are good at. Don't worry about what I'm doing or what Marjani is doing or what the other person is doing. Tap into your own potential, like focus on your own skills. And again, that's back to that mindfulness, like focus on what you have to offer. And then you create your own plan and you go from there. But don't sit there, and, compare it so much so to somebody that you basically emulate them. Tap into your own special skills and realize what you have to offer, and you just go from there, and you'll end up in places you didn't even think you would be.
Absolutely. I agree.
And
so that's actually the perfect segue. We talked about mindfulness. You want to have a more mindful mindset. And mindfulness, if you guys aren't aware, is living presently without judgment. The ability to observe your life in a non-judgmental way, almost like viewing your life as a third party, watching it on a screen. And when you do that, it gives you the ability to actually see what life really is without a jaded perspective. So have you ever been in a situation with someone and they're like giving you the replay of a situation you guys went through together and it's completely not what happened?
Like, that's not what happened. You didn't say that.
Yeah, like what? It's because their perspective, they already have rose-colored glasses on. Like they're not clear. They're not watching how things are actually happening. They're living life behind their own eyes, And it can be easy to do that, right? We live through our own experience. But in order to
Absolutely.
live like a more pragmatic, understanding, and compassionate life, you definitely have to be able to step out of that and look and observe it in your life. And because that's the moment that you're like, you know what? I was wrong there. Or even not afterwards, in the moment, be able to pause. You know, I have friends, and I know one of their biggest things, like, oh my God, my mouth is the worst. Like, I'll just say whatever and it just comes out. And I tell them, you got to practice mindfulness. If you can watch yourself, then you can see, you know what, it's not even necessary for me to say that, you know, or what's my end goal in this situation? Is what I'm doing actually helping me get to that period? Okay. So mindfulness teaches us how to truly experience and appreciate the now. You know, it's really important. Again, that goes right into the next thing. Oh, really quick, mindful tip. You can do a lot of mindful practices. I know that yoga is like a big thing that people do, and journaling, but mindfulness is just anything that connects you to your you-ness. So I really enjoy taking walks, and one of my favorite things to do is just watch the breeze go through the trees and just connect to nature and not think about anything else but that. Just push all of your doubts and your insecurities and just reflect and just connect to yourself. And that will really just give you a sense of wholeness. It's hard. Don't think you're just going to turn your brain off. It takes some practice, but it really is giving your mind like a centering that's necessary. Okay. And this goes
like
right. No, go ahead.
Sorry. And like you said, as you connect to yourself, you need to disconnect. This is another way to practice mindfulness from social media. Like sometimes you just have to like leave your phone where it is, go take a walk, go watch that breeze blow through those trees, and leave your phone, because we are a generation where our phones are attached to our hips. And sometimes the best way to disconnect and just remember, you know, what space you're in and just be appreciative is to disconnect from your phone, social media for at least 30 minutes. Like take that time just away to not look at anything or scroll anything or talk to anybody, but having that time to yourself so you can refocus on what's important and what you need to do, because the phones are a distraction. They are like one of the major distractions. So that's another tip, to just, you know, disconnect from, you know, media, electronics, all of that. Just take a walk, just you and nature. That's it.
Absolutely. And that really gives you a really good segue into the next thing, which is practice grateful living. Gratitude is a superpower. Without the ability to recognize and appreciate what's actually good in the world and your life and within you, you will not only miss out on success, but actually just living a joyful life and being happy. You know, being able to sit and say, I'm really happy that I can do X, Y, and Z. You know, it makes me feel good that I can write, or that I'm a good public speaker, or that I can cook. I have no desire to be a chef in life, but it gives me supreme joy to cook for others and make them, to see their smile on their face when they enjoy my food. I can appreciate that. I can appreciate that present moment without feeling like, well, I'm not as good as so-and-so cooking. Well, I'm not trying to be a chef. I don't need to be as good as so-and-so cooking. I just need to enjoy the presentness and appreciate how good it feels to do something that uses my talents in a way that's good for me. And if that means making just the people around me happy through a meal, then I fulfilled a purpose through my talent because I appreciated it. It's really simple. I mean, it takes time, but it's really simple. Just love what you have, and it will appreciate. It will get better. And that goes back to the stewardship. It's not just about physical things. It's about your attitude. Having an attitude of gratitude about life just appreciates positive energy and manifests more positive energy and brings you into alignment. Okay. So I know a big thing that we've been saying is self-awareness, self-awareness, self-awareness. Like, you need to be aware of what you're saying and what you're doing and all that. But it's like, how do I do that? How do I become more aware? I mean, I know myself, but I don't know. So mindfulness actually teaches us, like we said, to live without judgment and to interpret our actions more objectively, right? If you don't know yourself, it is very dangerous. If you're not aware of how you treat others, how your brain processes, how you go throughout your day, you're gonna get trapped in just existing. You're like a robot with no control. Somebody else is control. Really, your impulses are just controlling you. The people that have the best success in life and the most happiness are people that take ownership in their life. They understand that their happiness, that their success, that where they go in life is completely up to them and how they decide to jump on in and take ownership and control of that. And that starts with understanding yourself. And I'll give a prime example. I was talking to some of my coworkers about folding clothes, right? And they're like, how do you go home after you work? My job, I always work at least a 12-hour shift. How do you go home after working 12 hours and still do housework? And I'm like, well, I know myself. I don't take anything off when I get in the house. Like, if I get home and there's stuff that I need to fold or I need to do like start dinner real quick, I didn't prep dinner earlier, then I don't take off my work clothes and jump in the shower. Why? Because I know the moment I do that, I'm ready to sit down and I'm ready to just like decompress. But the thing is, if I wasn't aware of how my energy needs to be utilized and I need to stay into that mode, then I would just continue to have a messy house. And then the messy house would make me feel insecure about myself, that I'm not taking care of what I need to. And then, I feel bad about how I'm keeping my house. You know what I mean? And then I have to spend 3 weekends trying to get it back together as opposed to being mindful of doing a little bit every day. So it's just little ways that you understand yourself, that awareness, and that's just a small example, will help you. Going back to that example that we used earlier about watching Wendy Williams while you're doing a paper, if you know that TV distracts you while you're doing work, don't put on the TV while you're doing work. But if you don't know that, if you're not paying attention to yourself, if when you fail or you stumble, you don't ask yourself why, then you're not going to get better. If you're just stumbling and you're like, oh, well, next time. Well, hopefully. But if you don't know what the real issue is, if you don't know how you can take ownership of making it better or being proactive enough to prevent it from happening in the future, then it's just going to happen again. You're going to repeat the same mistakes over and over again and repeat kind of a level of unhappiness. So the one of the last things we're going to talk about is embracing the journey. There is beauty in the process of becoming you, okay? Becoming the person that you are, creating your journey, finding your genius, whatever you want to call it, okay? Throughout your process of whoever you're going to be, there's going to be growth and setbacks. There's going to be difficulties and triumphs. You have to embrace that all of these things are components to the process of yourself, of your life, of your success. Beyonce did not want to run around running miles, singing at the top of her lungs like her dad made her do. But if she didn't train and have the ability to push past that and understand at the end of the road she wanted to be Beyonce, even at her young age, then she would not be able to be on stage slaying, singing and dancing full choreography because she wouldn't have developed that capacity. And that's the thing. In our moments of stumbling or opposition, there's opportunity. So there's opportunity in our opposition to grow. And as I said before, if you're not asking yourself, what can I do better? What can I learn from this? You're going to stumble. You're going to have a hard time getting to the next stage. But understand that it's okay to stumble. Like, it's going to happen. Just know that you need to be aware of your mindset to when you stumble, you can pick up, learn from those mistakes, and exponentially increase your success. Because that's what it is. The reason why people have such slow progress versus the people who do is that people who learn from the mistakes quickly bounce back faster. That's it. They're like, oh, I did this wrong. Well, then I just won't do that. I'm going to change my process to be in alignment with the success that I said that I want. Okay. And we've probably said this with every slide, but you have to improve your awareness. You have to increase your level of awareness. And all that means is learn yourself. Spend time with yourself. Who am I? What do I want? What are my desires? Backtrack. Where do my opinions come from? Where does the success that I desire, where does it come from? Does it come from my inner strength and my inner talents and what I really want to do? Or is it a reflection of what society says I'm supposed to do? Because if it is, now it's time to check that, tap into your power, spend some time with yourself so you can realign and actually create a life that you want. There is nothing more like frustrating for me to watch than somebody who's 50, 55 years old, and to see how hard it is for them to just start to tap into their power. They're like, I spent the last 40 years of my life doing things that I have no love for. And listen, it's never too late. So don't take that as, oh, you know, only if you're in your 20s, this is what this is for. No, you can be 85 years old and tap into your passions and your growth, because here's the thing, the more you tap into the growth, the talents that you have now, the more talents you'll have later. You're going to start to unravel some stuff you did not even know existed within you, all because you believe in what you do have. So you're appreciating those talents, you're growing them. And that's all from improving that level of self-awareness.
Yeah, and like it just goes back to appreciating where you are, embracing the space that you're in. Like I look up to Karen Civil. I'm a huge fan. I love Karen Civil. But I realize that we're just at different places in our journey. So I can't, you know, compare myself to Karen Civil because we're just at two different points. It doesn't make my excuse me, it doesn't make my place, you know, less and hers more. It's just like we're at two different spots. That is, excuse me, we're at two different places. And when you can appreciate that and just embrace where you are in your journey, where you are in that space, then I feel like you won't feel the need to compare as much, and you'll just develop, you know, a better appreciation for, you know, where you are in this present moment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree.
So that's the comparison trap.
Those are the comparison traps, guys. You know, we talked about, just as a review, like what those 3Ds are in your life. You know, if you are feeling distracted, if you feel like maybe you're not appreciating life as it is and you're not grateful for the talents or the things around you, maybe your energy is off, or you feel like your quality of life isn't where you want it to be, maybe you can't really develop relationships the way that you want to, it's time to start reassessing how you're bringing in the information that comes into your life. You know, are you finding that negativity is being cultivated from the things that you're observing? You know, remember that process of observation, and then after you're observing that emotional shift and distraction and the negativity. So there is a way to overcome those comparison traps. Understanding yourself, appreciating your talents and your gifts, and understanding that there's a process to everything, okay? Nothing is smooth and pretty the whole way. You got to dig through some trenches so that you can develop the strength needed. Because here's one other thing, and this is just on another level about understanding the process. Everything that you're doing is training you for something. So if right now you feel like you're struggling with something, that's because it's a muscle that you need to have strong for something else. So right now, I'm delving into a new video conferencing webinar realm of my own journey. And as I stumble and learn and go through things, it's all like preparing me for my future TED Talk one day, because I spoke that into fruition. I want to have a TED Talk one day. So right now, understanding that, I know that there's going to be some times where maybe I don't feel comfortable doing public speaking, but it's preparing me for the moment that I said I wanted. And if I can learn from those moments, then I'll be prepared when that opportunity comes. Don't let life give you opportunities to learn so that you're prepared for your big moment, and then you miss it. You miss your lessons. Mm-hmm. Take them, appreciate what you have, and run with them so that you can build the life that you want.
And I'll leave, and this is my last thing. This was my first webinar. I usually, I'm no stranger to the camera, but this is my first webinar. And so initially, like, I was super nervous, probably why I got off to a rough start. But I know that it's only, preparing me for, like you said, what I asked for and like that greater purpose. So I just wanted to piggyback off of what you said, because that really resonated with me. So I just had to stick that in there.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. And I can completely appreciate it. And you're doing fine. BT dubs, y'all, tell her she's doing fine. But thank you all so much for joining us. Once again, my name is Marjani Aladdin. We can bring up the slides with our information again, and I'll put my website inside of the live chat. And April, if you want to do the same, please feel free to follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our blogs. If you signed up for the webinar, if you RSVP'd, you've automatically been opted into our newsletters, so you'll get these slides in your email tomorrow. You'll have access to going back over them. And tell us your thoughts. Hit us up on Facebook, write us a message. Tell us how comparison really has affected your life. What is it that you're struggling with? Let's have a conversation. I really appreciate you guys joining us and listening to our story and how comparison affects us in our daily lives. And April, I know you feel the same.
Yeah, like Marjani said, thank y'all for joining us. And you have the links where you can find us. You can find me at pinkforecast.com. My IG and Facebook are the exact same. And again, we really appreciate you taking time out of your day to do this, because there's a lot of stuff that you could have been doing opposed to being here. So just thank you, thank you, thank you. And I hope you enjoyed it. And again, like, let us know, or let us know what we can improve on, what you liked, what you thought we could have done better. Just let us know, because we welcome the feedback, and that's how we get better. I'm open to constructive criticism, so just let us know what you think. And again, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, guys, one last thing. I know that this is one of those things that's we don't really talk about with our friends, but just if any of this, if one thing in here resonated with you, please share it with one person in your life, because it's not something we talk about comparing our lives to others. We feel ashamed about it. And if we can open up the dialect and the dialogue and really make people feel comfortable about it and understand that there are steps to overcome it and get your mindset to where you want it to be, it's going to help somebody. So if anything in this webinar affected you, if it, connected with you, please share it with at least one person. I hope that it does the same for them. Okay. So thanks for joining us, guys. Have a great night.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.